last video for review for the history final. Okay, so this is it, and I'm going to focus on in this video a little bit about common sense, the Declaration of Independence, and the American Revolution itself. Just some of the things I think that are very important to remember from your study guide. And let's begin with common sense. I think probably the most important thing you know about common sense is that the timing of it couldn't have been more important, right? It was the end of 1775 and beginning of 1776. There had already been battles at Lexington, at Bunker Hill. The Olive Branch petition was a failure. The British Navy had destroyed some towns. And it was at a moment of hesitation, they said, that this small booklet written by Thomas Paine is now published, and it becomes an instant bestseller because it was just basically summarizing what everybody knew, what was going on between the British government and the king and the colonies in North America. And he lays it out very well that we have at this time an opportunity to create our own government, a government for the people, that this revolution is about all people, not just wealthy elites. And I think if anything, it's most influential in having the elites, those who would be in the Continental Congress, start really strongly considering that we declare independence from Great Britain. So that's probably its biggest influence, is all those guys would have read it, and it most likely it did help sort of like push them over just far enough now that they're going to start the process of becoming independent from Great Britain. As Thomas Paine said, remember, we're already at war. People have already died. What are we waiting for? We have the opportunity now. I could see you matching some of what he said to the actual like modern day translations. That's what we did in our notes. Maybe you'd be matching. I don't know. We'll have to see. It could be multiple choice. Let's move on, and let's take a look at the Declaration now. So with the Declaration of Independence, this is a very important document, more so than even Thomas Paine's Common Sense, right? This document has affected millions, hundreds of millions, if not more, throughout history in all parts of the world. The Declaration of Independence is the first of its kind that I think I know of in the human race, in regards to addressing the fact that people have certain rights. And among these, of course, are the right to life, to be free, and the pursuit of happiness, to have a good life, right? That's what this whole country is supposed to be about. And other rights, too, that we have the right to create a government that's number one job is to protect our rights. And if government fails to do that, it's our right to change that government, alter it, okay? And so you have the whole two big themes of the American Revolution. A revolution about the common people, and a revolution that these common people, all people, have certain rights that are inside this document. You do need to know the 5 sections, how it's organized, the preamble, rights of the people, the tyrannical acts of the king or list of grievances, the attempts at reconciliation, our repeated petitions have been met with repeated what? Good job, you said injuries. And then, of course, the colonies are free and independent, and we use the British words against them. Do you remember the words? The colonies are and right ought to be. Remember, in the Declaratory Act said we should be subordinate and obey the British. Now they changed it to free and independent states, right? And we use our name for the first time, the United States of America. Okay, so giving examples of what each section says, like, can you give me 1 or 2 tyrannical acts of the king? What does it mean to be reconciled? Okay, so just making sure you know your structure of the Declaration, what it says. The preamble, of course, is out there as an option. If you can get it word for word, extra credit. Okay, there'll be a spot for that. But don't spend all your time on that. Okay? And then let's wrap this up by looking at I can't bring that down. All right. But we're just looking at the war here. And we began with this. I think on this part, I think you should know that this is the beginning of the war, right? It's an American victory, or victory for the people of Massachusetts, right? But it's the shot heard around the world that's most important, because people will learn. The shot remembers news, that people will hear about a revolution that seems remarkable and unexpected, and is about two themes that interest people around the world, right? They would be interested in those two themes if you remember the themes, okay? Then let's see here, let's go here. All right, we went outside, sorry, Block 2, to do Battle of Bunker Hill, and we learned about the lesson of holding the high ground, what happened against their own best judgment, military knowledge. The British made the choice to attack uphill, a frontal assault on a fortified place on high ground, and they paid dearly. Remember, the cost was high. Only one class, Block 1, correctly identified. That was opportunity cost. All right, moving on. Don't forget about these guys up here. Then, understanding the importance of the Olive Branch Petition. It's a failure, but it was one last attempt at peace, right? And you always have to try to do peace before war. So I don't blame them. But remember, the king's like having nothing to do with it. He gets that double message. Colonists are now enemies. They begin to destroy coastal towns in New England. Then we move to 76. And, it's important to understand the course of events, right? The timeline. We've talked about that in several classes, that understanding the timeline helps you understand what happened, why something was important, all right? And so in 1776, we now see some events happening. Thomas Paine's important document coming out, his book. And at the same time, the British are abandoning their strategy to take down this rebellion in New England. They'll leave Boston in March. They were surrounded by the militia, or now American Army, Continental Army, for many, many, many months, and more guns had been brought from Fort Ticonderoga, which they had captured the previous May, remember, right up here. And they now had cannon on the high ground, so there was no way they could stay. And they left not to come back to Boston or New England for the rest of the war. They will seek to try to isolate it, as many of you guys noted, and it begins by going to the middle colonies now in 1776. So these are the major events that summer. Yay, declaration, but at the same time, boo, the British return. Battle of Brooklyn, or Long Island, happens, and this is the first real battle of the war, right? Real battle. The Washington is now the leader, and he's crushed. And what happens is the British take New York. They'll hold it as a base for the rest of the war, and Washington learns a lesson. Okay, moving on from this, Washington shows at Trenton that he's a bold commander, that he's willing to take risks, and he does get a victory, but it's a small one. Trenton is nowhere near the size of Long Island. Okay, and then we go to 77, the Grand British Plan we talked about in class, having an army come out of Canada, an army coming out of New York City to meet up the Hudson River, isolate New England, but it never happens, because the guy in New York City goes to Philadelphia and captures it, and nothing happens. Congress flees. And the guy that's left by himself, his name is General Burgoyne, is now surrounded at Saratoga and surrenders. And this is a big deal. It's the first time the British lose a whole army. You can't lose whole armies and try to fight a war. In fact, the second time it happens, they give up. The French see what's happening. They're now willing to join us. And the main U.S. Army goes into Valley Forge to become, over that winter, with French help and help of others, a real fighting force. And we end up being able to go toe-to-toe with the British in the middle colonies, but it's a stalemate. They end up just being around New York City. Anytime they leave, we just kind of follow them. Nothing's really happening for the British there, and they can't make any headway. They're not winning anything. Philadelphia fell. Nobody cared, right? So they then go south, and their southern strategy is to Take Georgia, Savannah, and then Charleston, South Carolina. Take those big cities, well, big for the area, and then move their way north. And things go well for a while, but the same thing happens here in the South as in other areas. American forces, Continental Army, they just kind of like come out of nowhere. And next thing you know, the British are fighting all over the place. And they end up in Yorktown in 1781 after fighting for about a year and a half. And in the South, they are there to resupply, and their commander, Cornwallis, gets himself surrounded. What I would do is I would look at the video again about the American Revolution, you guys, the animated one. It does a great job taking you through all of this. This is the second time the British will now surrender. They basically call it quits. And a year and a half later, in the spring of 1783, around that time, I think, the Treaty of Paris is signed. And what's important to know about this is it ends the war. And one, the British have to recognize us as an independent nation. And two, it sets our border at the Mississippi River. Okay, guys, good luck. Watch that video. Send me questions if you need some help. And we'll see you later.